What is going on, everybody, and welcome back to another video and podcast from Fantasy Football Scout. My name is Tom, and today we're joined by someone a little bit different. We're joined by Lewis from Fantasy Football Scout. He is our EFL fantasy editor, but we're not going to be talking EFL. We're going to be talking about FPL because Lewis is currently sitting pretty at 8.5k in the world, which is an amazing start. So we're going to get a little bit of insight into how he's done it and what his next moves could potentially be heading into Gameweek 12 and beyond. So Lewis, how are you doing?
Yes, very well. Thank you, Tom. Thank you for having me on today. I feel very honoured, very pleased to be here. Although I think it's early days so far in the season, so it's been good, been very good.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, do drop a like on the video, subscribe if you want to hear more from the massive range of managers that we've got on the channel, including Lewis, top 10k. So we're going to chat briefly about Lewis's game week 1, his season so far, his wild card, which he sold Haaland before playing Wolves and Southampton. So that was obviously a massive call that's paid off. We're going to look at his game week 11 because he absolutely smashed it with Bruno Fernandes captain, and then we're going to get his insight into game week 12 and beyond with his 2 free transfers. So Lewis, just to kick off, I've got the your season history on the screen for the podcast listeners. It's 8k now, but game week 1 started off not the best, 4 million in the world, but then lots of green arrows up to a game week 8 wildcard, which has since taken you from 70k to 8k. So we'll get into your game week 1 now. I'll bring that onto the screen. Quickly read that out for the podcast. You went for Sanchez, Mazraoui, Quansah, Mikolenko, Garnacho, Salah, Hudson-Odoi, Palmer captain, Havertz, Haaland, and Calvert-Lewin. So the big one there, you went for Salah, Haaland, and Palmer, despite many people in the FPL community overlooking Palmer after his lack of pre-season.
That's right. Yeah. I mean, the fact is, Tom, 22 goals, 11 assists, they speak for themselves. It's hard to argue against that. And people can argue about penalties and what that means, but that doesn't matter on FPL because they all count. So he was sensational season prior. And I thought that actually going for all 3 worked. Made most sense, really, in terms of team value looking forwards. And actually that whoever would blank in that out of that 3 would actually make up for those that hauled. So actually saying game week 6, we had Palmer scoring 4, which was unbelievable. But actually, they all returned in game week 2, game week 3, game week 5. So it paid off in some aspects. But I looked at holding all of them for a few weeks and then tactically moving them on between international breaks. That was what I always set up to do pre-season.
Yeah, definitely paid off for sure. You also went for double Man United as well. That you kind of got a little bit ahead there. Mazraoui was one of the best defenders early on.
That's right. I thought that transfer from Man United was really shrewd. I thought it was a great signing from them. I think he's a standout fullback, so it was an easy pick for me. Garnacho didn't quite work out how I hoped, and I think there's still lots of potential for him this season on FPL. I think he's a really good option if he can nail that spot on the wing. But I mean, there's so much rotation there, and we'll have to wait and see who Amorim decides to play. But I think overall, Mazraoui was a great option to start the season until things started sort of unravel slightly for United. Although they have picked up in recent weeks.
Yeah, and then the omissions that you went for in game week 1 was Trent and Saka, who both did all right, but you can't have everyone. But yeah, no Trent was probably against the curve, I think.
That's it, yeah. And I think you're exactly right with that. I didn't have the funds to do it, and I would love to have Trent in there, but it just didn't work. And actually, I think I was looking at Virgil and weighing it up, but I decided to opt for cheaper defenders to prioritise those big 3 premiums. That was kind of how I saw it to start the season.
So game week 1 was not the best, but that Palmer, Haaland and Salah axis really served you well for the first 7 weeks. And then you did a game week 8 wildcard, which you decided to sell Haaland just before he played the worst defence in the league at the time and then Southampton at home. So that was brave. I did the opposite. I think I was beating you at that point in the Scout Work League, and I decided to buy Haaland. You decided to sell him, and since then we've both gone in opposite directions. So why did you sell Haaland before Wolves and Southampton?
I think it was certainly rogue, Tom. That'd be the word to use. And I think most people were quite surprised that I had done that. But I actually felt that I haven't really been convinced by City at all this season. And as we've sort of discussed off air, that I think Haaland has had so many chances. But the trouble with a 15 million premium, like with Palmer and with Salah is that they need to return every single week. And I just felt that, yes, he's scored 12 goals in 11 games, and that can't be argued either. His record is still phenomenal. But from an FPL standpoint, 2 goals in 6 is not good enough at 15 mil. And actually, the funds can be spread elsewhere. And I felt that although they were going up against Wolves, I thought Wolves away, Molineux's never an easy place to go. I didn't think they were going to turn them over. And of course, they didn't. It ended 2-1. So they got that last minute winner through John Stones. And then the Southampton game, I was arguably quite fortunate in that. That certainly, I was expecting probably a higher score, not just being 1-0, but the Saints did well there at the Etihad. So actually, it's worked out well. And then over the last 2 weeks, obviously, we saw Haaland score against Brighton. But generally, I've been really pleased. And actually, in some ways, I was sort of expecting it, which is why I was going to sell him, because I think with their injuries and some of the sort of concerns off the pitch at City, I think actually it's paid dividends, at least for now.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, I have Haaland. I'm going to keep him one more week, I think, and then move to Salah. Does De Bruyne coming back worry you? I guess you have been on like the extreme end of Haaland these last few weeks, because you would probably say he's going to score more than 2 goals in the next 6. So for me, it's gone as well as it could have done, I think, with Salah going crazy as well. But you must be obviously wary of Haaland's potential.
Of course, and that can't be denied. Haaland is always, he's always capable of a haul. But I think it's all well and good saying that, but the proof is in the pudding, the proof is in points. So actually, for us to say, oh, well, he's nailed a haul here, he's nailed a haul here. Well, if he's not scoring, then he's not scoring. So in essence, actually, you're sort of just biding your time for no reason. My feeling over the next maybe 4 or 5 is that I'm actually not even that confident in him. I think from sort of 17 onwards, from Villa onwards till about 22, 23, the Man City's fixture run is fantastic. But that festive period, those games aren't easy. Liverpool away, United at home, even Forest at home won't be easy. So I think, of course, I have no doubt he'll score at least 1 or 2, but the hope is that he only scores 1 or 2 and not 12. That's the difference.
Yeah, for sure. So that was the wild card. You also on that wild card, you went for a massive midfield with alongside Salah and Palmer. You also went for Son and Foden. Differentials, like lots of money in that midfield as well. So talk us through those 2 decisions.
Foden, really, to start with Man City, that was kind of looking at a City asset. I did want to keep a City player in there, so I opted for Foden. Didn't work out really. I mean, he picked up an assist, which went well against Wolves, as we mentioned, that corner in the 96th minute to Stones. That was good. But other than that, he obviously didn't really impress. And he had quite a few chances. That Bournemouth game, particularly, my word. I mean, he had a couple of really good opportunities. Son was a bit of a punt, to be honest. I think Son's a fantastic player coming back from injury. Was really excited to see him in that Spurs team again under Ange. So I was sort of hoping that there'd be a chance that he would do well. And actually, I think he did. He did well against West Ham when I did bring him in. That was good. And then the Palace game, he missed out, a bit gutted. But the Villa game was the one for me that I just thought he's a sell now. And it was a shame for him, because he played really well in that win, 55 minutes, and then he got subbed off. And I mean, his face, he looked absolutely gutted. And I think most people in the stadium were quite surprised, as was I watching it on the TV. So I think actually with the concern around rotation and his fitness, I think that he is probably a sell. They've got some decent fixtures post City, but I think with the worry around his fitness and the fact that Ange just does play him so far out on the left, I'm just not that confident in him, to be honest.
Yeah, fair enough. We'll come to your Game Week 12 transfer plans shortly, but we'll look back on your Game Week 11 briefly now. So you got 83. Massive week to take you into the top 10k. So I'll read it out for those on the podcast. You had Fabianski in goal, 9 points. Robinson, Trent, and 8 Nori. Son, Salah, Palmer, and Buemo. Wood, Strand Larson, and then there in that midfield, 34 points. Bruno, captain. That's a hell of a shout, to be fair. It doesn't really get better than that. A differential haul. You brought in Bruno, was it for this week or?
Yeah, it was game week. It was that week. It was 4-11. That's right.
Yeah. So you'd seen him against Chelsea. You'd seen
I was fully
Van
convinced.
Nistelrooy. Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. Exactly, Tom. That's it. Do you know what? It was the Chelsea game. I was really confident. I thought that Rude was playing really far forward. I think in a 10 role, he just flourishes for United, and that he's their penalty taker. He is their main asset going forwards. And actually, irrespective of the Amorim speculation and the formation, I just thought for the foreseeable future, at a minimum, he was a great option. And then obviously Mo goes and bags 14 points for me, which was great. And then Bruno went and did one better, so I couldn't really believe it. I was going to take the goal as it stood, and then turned out it was a goal and 2 assists. So I was absolutely delighted with it. To be honest, it was. I mean, that's probably one of the best captaincy shouts from a differentials perspective that I've backed.
Yeah, for sure. And I guess with Bruno, you're on there early. Like he might come back down to earth, or he might smash it under Amarin, but you're there, and he's gonna rocket in price if he keeps bagging 17 pointers. And you do place a bit of emphasis on team value. You were talking about this off air. Well, to be fair, there's this little secret. We actually recorded this video before, but I was muted, so this is a rerun. But yeah, so talk us through your approach to team value, because you picked your premiums at the start with that in mind.
I did, yeah. I think it's really important, and I think the emphasis this season on team value has never been more important. The likes of Haaland being 15 million is going to be crucial throughout the season, and actually even having zero point 0.5 in the bank or 0.3 in the bank and seeing your team value rise, I think it will probably make the difference. It'll be a make or break between where you finish in your mini leagues and also your overall rankings. So that is one thing I do look particularly at. I keep a close eye, but I'm not someone to make a move as soon as a game ends, because I think there's always time midweek for players to get injured or things to happen. So I think I don't move immediately, but I certainly keep a close eye on who is rising. And as an example, someone like Danny Welbeck, who I really like the look of, actually now is someone that I am on the verge of not being able to afford, simply because that is just how value works in this game.
Yeah, yeah. And just going back to quickly, like, wider strategy, you rarely sort of roll a transfer. You tend to, looking at your season history, you made one a week every week between game week 2 and game week 7, and then you wildcarded and was able to bank a few, and then you made 2. So there's no hits, there's no sort of big surgery. I guess part of that is because you're doing well, so that obviously you have less bad players, fewer bad players to take out. But is that something you look to avoid hits? You know, if you were doing badly, would you pull a -8 or not?
No, the answer probably would be no. I mean, we discussed off air, didn't we? I think in reality, in truth, I think I don't mind the idea of it if it's really essential, but I think when your team is looking okay, there's not the same necessity, and actually that 8 points at the end of the season can make a massive difference. So to begin the season, I was just doing transfers as I always do as they go, because I think we learn a lot in the first, say, 6 to 8 game weeks of FPL normally. And actually now, as you said, I did roll 2. I had 3 transfers lined up, used 2 of them. I've got 2 in the bank going into 12. So, I do have a few saved, but not as many as other managers. I think it's important to just use them, because actually, like we said about team value and structure, things change really quickly. And so actually, it's good to jump on those trends while you can before saving 5 transfers. And actually, you need to make 9. So it depends on really what your view is. But my take is that I think you should use them as they come.
Yeah. And then just a final strategy question. I think you said earlier that you planned this game week 8 wildcard right at the start of the season. Did that sort of help clear your mind, and was that flexible, or were you always sort of pinpointed on that week?
I was certainly flexible. I'll always stay flexible in FPL, because anything can happen, and it could have been 4 injuries. I mean, Palmer and Salah could have got injured. That would have totally changed my team outlook. So, I think I'm always open to it, but really, I think it's always worth pinpointing dates in the diary of where things look good to make proper moves, or where fixture swings, all those things that are available on FFS, just keeping a close eye on where there are big changes. And that international break between the first one and the second one, which has just happened, was really important to me.
Yeah, for sure. And that wildcard certainly paid off, looking at the overall rank. So we'll come to your game week 12 now, your plans. You've got, if I remember from attempt 1 of this video, you have 0.8 in the bank, I think. And
indeed, yes.
And 2 free transfers. So a little bit to work with there. So for the podcast, the current bus team from Lewis is Sanchez in goal, Robinson, Trent with a flag, and Lewis Hall at the back. Son, Fernandez, Palmer, Embuemo, and Salah captain in midfield. And then Chris Wood and Raul Jimenez up front, with Strand Larsen, Fabianski, Aït-Nouri, and Rico Lewis on the bench. So really good squad there, some good players on the bench as well. But I guess the obvious place to start is Trent, because he's flagged. There's some reports he might be fit for Southampton, but the club are more aiming for Real Madrid. So you wouldn't think that's a game to risk Trent in. I guess if he's out, were you keen on... Is he part of your long-term plans, or would you be happy to take him out this week?
No, I think I'll look to move him on, to be honest. I think The fixtures for Liverpool don't look fantastic in then over the next four. I think long term, from about 17 onwards, they look really strong, and that's probably when I'd really target Trent. I was, of course, looking at the upside of attacking returns, which didn't come, but that's one of those things on a wild card. Some players really do return, and others don't. And unfortunately for Trent, he's picked up this injury, so hopefully he gets better soon. But I think from an FPL perspective, no, I'm not really convinced. I think if he starts Southampton, I would keep him. I think for a 1 week punt. After that, I'm not so keen, particularly with the lack of attacking returns at 7 million. Same argument as Haaland, really. I don't think he's worth it. So I'll probably look to move him on either this week or potentially from about 14 onwards.
Yep, and with their fixture swing, who's the big replacements there? Is Arsenal defence coming into mind, or maybe straight swap in the Liverpool backline as well?
Yeah, I think Arsenal. I think Arsenal are a really decent option. I do. I mean, I'm not. I haven't. I'm more keen on Arsenal's attack than their defense this season. I think they've shown some sort of liability, some frailties in their defense. But generally, the Arsenal defense has been fantastic over the years. So they're definitely options. So Gabriel would be the standout. Equally, a downgrade to a Virgil would be a clear option for me, and I think that sort of opens up some more cash in the bank long term to bring in and look at some different options potentially up front, more premium options potentially. So yeah, I'll look to move on Trent for someone like a Gabriel or a Virgil. But there is the alternative too. The other route I go down is I go sort of a cheaper defender looking like a Digne or say an Ola Reina, the upside of looking at a proper premium forward over the next say 2 to 4 weeks.
Yeah, and then if you got any other moves in mind, any I mean, we're assuming that Palmer and Mbeumo are just international break flags and they'll be good. But any other? Who else are you considering taking out?
Yeah, I think Heung-min Son is probably the one, unfortunately, that I'm going to look to move on. I think if it was different and he was fully fit and the fixtures were probably a bit better with City away, I probably would look to keep him, but I just don't think he's worth 10 million as it stands. So Saka's probably the one that I'd target. I like the look of Newcastle fixtures long term, so someone like an Isak, but again, that will require some more tinkering. So it will probably be someone like a Trent and Son out to call it Virgil and Saka. That's what I'd be looking at. Other moves potentially Strand Larson. I mean, I'd have gone for Cunha if I could. I think I'd have backed him, and I actually did have him in my team, but just couldn't afford him. So he's someone that I'd look to bring in potentially long term. That's another name to target, and then I guess it will wait and see over the festive period when the fixtures really ramp up.
Yeah, for sure. And so you keep very keen on Saka there. Another team that has good fixtures, Chelsea as well. You looking to make it a triple up, maybe a Jackson or?
Desperate for the triple up. I knew it. I knew. No, to be fair, listen. To be fair, I think Jackson is a good option. I think he's a good option. I think for the next say, I would argue even 10 fixtures, Chelsea have really, really an ideal run. So in some ways, Jackson's someone I'd look at. Isak's probably my preferred option, but I have no doubt that Jackson will score a few over that time. I'd probably aim to move for him post Spurs, so that's game week 15, because I think your next four games are a bit difficult. But following that, I think actually that run is going to be unbelievable, and that could be a really scary combo of Sanchez, Palmer, and Jackson in my team. So it's definitely one to think about for sure.
Yeah. And then just finally, you've got Lewis Hall there. Newcastle are getting back into people's consciousness, I think, with Gordon and Isak. You mentioned Isak there, but as Newcastle, are they featuring in your sort of longer term plans and any other teams that you're looking at?
Yeah, I don't think I would look at more than two options really for Newcastle. I think Lewis Hall, to be honest, was a budget defender, and actually it's worked out really well because they've actually performed really well over the past few weeks. So I'm delighted to have him in the team, and I'm sure he'll feature quite a few times, sort of as a good rotation option. Isak would be the one. I know we briefly mentioned Anthony Gordon. I think I like the upside of him if Isak is not fit and he's playing as a number 9. I'm less keen on that midfield spot. I think there are just too many good midfielders this year on FPL. He just takes up a spot, and I think there's more upside on Isak. So we'd probably look for Isak over Gordon. And of course, the obvious question is Erling Haaland. When does Erling Haaland come back in? So I think in my opinion, I will definitely look at Erling Haaland at some point. There's no doubt. But for the next 5 or 6, I don't really have any interest. I think from the tail end of sort of the festive period going into January is when I'll target Man City. But for the time being, it will be Arsenal, probably Liverpool, Newcastle are a good shout as well. Those are the three, and potentially Man United too, depending on how they get on under Amorim.
Yeah, for sure. And then we'll just finish with a couple of quicker questions. Chris Wood versus Strand Larson, is that close?
Really difficult one. I think it depends on the setup. I would say I think Chris Wood long term is still a really good option. I don't think you can rule out Forest. I think they've got some good games in there. Teams that are playing against Ipswich at home, United away still have been leaky. Villa at home, I think they'll score some goals. For a 1 week punt, I'd probably be looking at Chris Wood against Arsenal, which is maybe again a bit of the differential in me that likes that. So I'll go Wood.
So you're going to play him then this week over
Yeah,
Strand Larson?
I think so. That'll be my go. I think Fulham have looked really decent at Craven Cottage under Marco Silva. They're difficult to break down. So that will be close. I suspect it'll be a cagey affair. Whereas that Forest game could have some goals in it. Seriously.
Yeah. And then captaincy, you've got it on Salah, Palmer, Vice. You're going to stick with Salah?
Yeah, I think Mo's the one this week for me. I just think he has just been unbelievable for Liverpool this season. 8 goals, 6 assists. I mean, it's just ridiculous numbers. The GOAT of FPL as it stands. So I think he's the obvious one. I like Palmer, and I think actually if the game was a 3 o'clock or maybe even a half or on a Sunday, I'd have gone for it. But I think the 12:30 after the international break, I'm just not that confident. I do think Chelsea win, but I don't think it'll be as comfortable as others imagine. So I'd be looking at Mo. That'll be my plan.
Perfect. Yeah. So that we'll leave that there. Lewis, thank you very much for your
Thank you.
insights into strategy, the wildcard, and your game week 12 transfer plans. If you like what you hear, do subscribe, like the video, and check out the podcast. Drop that 5 stars if you're listening on there. Lewis, good luck with the game week and with all your Fantasy EFL content as well, which you can check out on Scout if you're looking for a new game to play. That's not going quite as well, I don't believe, but
No, we'll focus on FPL for the time being. But no, thank you so much for having me on. Really do appreciate it, and all the best to those listening as well.
yeah, cheers guys.